Okay, so kind of got to thinking about this when I was looking at other people's blitz games, and like all the time I'm talking about improve your chess and it'll help improve your blitz, and that's true to a certain extent. But there are certain things you can do to like win a blitz game. It's not going to exactly help your chess per se, but like there are definitely ways you can like maximize your chances of winning a blitz game, even in the most dire situations. Um, and it doesn't have much to do with chess. So let me just show you an example of a game played between players of around the strength of most people in the chat, and we're going to try to break it down and see what exactly is going wrong. Okay. So we're just going to look at this game. It's a 5-minute blitz game between two 1300s. Okay. So we're going to look at the opening. So part of the thing to notice is the amount of time used in the opening. So, okay. So white so far, okay, just an opening. White's used 15 seconds for 5 moves. So it's a little slow, but like it's nothing to really complain about. If he was playing a 3-minute game, 15 seconds for 3 moves might be a little much. Generally in the opening you want to take about a second and a half a move. So like the trick is, okay, like you play d4, right? So in most situations, if you're going to play d4, you're going to play this move next, right? So when you're playing, you can like hover your pawn over the square. So like, okay, and then when they play a move, you can just like make the move immediately. But okay, you don't want to play c4 against every legal move, right? Like against a move like e5, you might want to play c4. So you don't necessarily want to pre-move it. So when you play d4, you can like have this hovered, and then okay, if they play a move that doesn't require c4, okay, then you change it. But if they play a move that you want to play c4 against, you can just let go of your mouse button, and you save some time. You shouldn't take more than a second to make that move. And again, this is like a small thing, but like it adds up. So if you're feeling super adventurous, like you can pre-move c4 if you want, So just like have input. And then, okay, if they play knight f6 and you play c4, okay, you're happy. Of course, if you want to play knight f3 on move 2, then you can have that pre-moved. You can feel reasonably confident that knight f3 won't endanger you too much. But okay, I mean, it's a small thing. It's a small thing. Okay, so anyway, like I said, the time issue is not the big thing at this moment. Because, okay, 15 seconds for a 5-minute game, it's fine. Okay, so e3, bishop e2, okay, so these are, normal moves, nothing spectacular. Okay, h6, castle, knight d7, okay. So nothing earth-shattering is happening, both guys are kind of developing their pieces. b4, staking out space, makes sense. Okay, c5, I don't really like that move. Take, okay, time is still fine. Knight b5, this is actually a good blitz move. There's always some ideas of like knight c7, bishop c7. I'm not actually sure that white's necessarily threatening something, but it looks dangerous. And a6 just kind of further weakens black's position. Okay, so black chose to play this move e5. Okay, so here in this position, whether taking like this way or this way is better is not really so important. I mean, okay, objectively, maybe it's better to take this way, and then if you can take with the bishop, and your pawns are still in a nice formation, and you just want a clean pawn. But taking this way has its merits too. You open the d file, potentially get your knight outpost on d6, stuff like that. So it doesn't really matter which way you take, but realize that 3 is bigger than 1. So you have 1, 2, 3 attackers, 1 defender. So most of you probably realize that 3 is bigger than 1 and realize that that's a free pawn. So again, it doesn't really matter how you take it, but you want to do it relatively quickly. Okay, so 6 seconds for this move is fine. No problem. Okay, knight e4. Okay, so you have to ask yourself in this position, what is black threatening? And okay, so it doesn't seem like he's threatening much. Like this is actually covered by the knight. Like probably black's most dire threat here is to play like g5. Oops, so say I'm playing a move like a3. So g5 here, take, and take, winning a pawn back. Okay. So, whether you see that or not is not super consequential. Because, that's a really like minor threat, relatively speaking. Because you're up a pawn here, so losing your pawn is not something that's going to really make or break the game. I mean, if you saw that in, 2 or 3 seconds, great. But if you didn't, that's fine too. But the question is, okay, well, what needs help getting out? Okay, well, this guy is fine. This guy is fine. This guy is fine. He's helping defend this guy. This guy is relatively okay. I mean, maybe you'd want to play bishop d3, but really the pieces you need to get out in this situation are the rook, the queen, and the rook. So, okay, if I give you like 5 seconds here, what's a natural move here? So I know you've seen this position for longer than 5 seconds, but okay, I mean, like, in a 5-second time frame, well, what are some natural moves here? Anyone in the chat can provide a possible move for white here? Okay, so yeah, queen c2 definitely makes a lot of sense. Queen c2 definitely makes a lot of sense. Okay, because you're getting your queen off of this d file, because ideally you want to put a rook here, right? Because the rook should be, on this file, because, you're opposing the queen, it provides a lot of pressure. So queen c2 definitely makes a lot of sense, because you're getting a tempo, and this knight actually is kind of stuck, right? It only really has here to go to. This is just something that should come very naturally to you. This is something that should come very naturally to you. Queen c2. If you want to be a bit more adventurous, queen d5 also makes a lot of sense, because you're doing the same thing, but you're actually putting more pressure on the position, because you're kind of attacking here, so you can do stuff like this. It's also reasonable. A move like rook b1 is reasonable too, trying to get your rook on the open file. Although you're not actually like doing anything here. You have to be careful when you play a move like this, because this is how you actually get into trouble. Because notice now what you're doing. So you always have to watch out for like patterns. And so this pattern of this and this and this is a problem. Okay? So, for example, here, I mean, again, whether these variations actually work or not is not really the point. So again, you have to kind of not entirely think about the true truth of the position, the truth of the position, like the true chess evaluation. Because, here, if I were black, I would probably play a6, and then no matter what you did, I mean, no matter where you moved, I would play knight c3 here. And okay, whether this is good or not for black is not important as much as you shouldn't really allow this as white, regardless, right? Because, like, this knight's the only thing defending this square. And so probably on a6 you have to play something queen c2, but already it's getting messy, right? Take, and then maybe I can take on a2, and all of a sudden it's getting messy. So rook b1 is probably not the move you want to make. So you have to be careful. But yeah, queen c2 makes sense, queen d5 makes sense. Okay, when I actually saw this position for the first time, the move that immediately jumped to my mind was this move, knight to d6. Now whether this is a good move or not is up for debate. It probably isn't great. But my idea was, okay, if knight c3, I don't really mind exchanging this knight for this bishop. Because, okay, I mean, this bishop's not doing much, and that knight is black's best piece. And my idea was, okay, if knight takes, I actually have two interesting possibilities. I have a possibility of taking with the queen, I also have a possibility of taking with the pawn. Now, a lot of you might get scared by taking with the pawn because you see, oh, this is a problem. Okay, so let me teach you a little secret. This is actually not a problem. Because I think 99 of 100 players would love to have this position in blitz as white. Because, okay, after take, notice the white's trumps. So white has a pawn for the exchange, this guy. Also, this queen has great scope. This bishop is attacking this pawn. And I would actually say that even in true chess evaluation, this position is probably preferable for white. Especially in blitz, though. Especially in blitz. This is very hard for black to kind of meet in blitz. Because, you're just going to kind of put your rook on the d file, maybe start pushing this pawn. I mean, black's dark squares are super weak. These pieces kind of suck. It's a real problem. But of course, it's not necessary to go into that complication. You can simply take with the queen. But, say taking with a queen is like 0.3 better, just for example. It might actually be better in blitz to take with a pawn. Simply because it provides more complications. And the type of complications that this situation provides probably favors white. because black's kind of defending, and it's always harder to defend in blitz than it is to attack. So that's something you have to think about. But okay, I mean, queen takes d6 is perfectly playable. But okay, back to my main point, though, which is that after 94, queen c2 is natural, maybe knight d6 is fine, queen d5 is fine, rook b1 is probably not good because it puts your rook and queen in a situation where it's a fork is possible. Okay, but the main point I want to stress here is you don't want to take much time on this move. Because, okay, I mean, say you make a literal nothing move. Say you play, like I said, a3. Is your position ruined after a3? No. I mean, okay, like I said, maybe he can win a pawn back with g5 and take or something. Oops. And take. Okay. So yeah, but is your position ruined? No. So you have to kind of understand in what situations you need to take your time and in what situations it's just better to make a move. So okay, maybe you spend a couple seconds realizing that, you know, that this diagonal is a problem, that, you know, maybe this knight can hop into here if this knight goes away. Maybe you don't realize anything, but in any case, no matter what, you shouldn't be spending more than a few seconds on this move. Okay. But, look at white's time. Look at white's time. Okay, you see that? How much time did he spend? You math majors out there. Math is hard, but I believe he spent 33 seconds on that move, if not mistaken. Right? 33 seconds. Okay, that's a problem. You don't really have 33 seconds to spend on move 13 in a 5-minute game. In a 2-hour game, yeah, you do. In a 45-minute game, sure. In a 5-minute game, it's tough. And it's not like rook c1 was a particularly great move anyway. So, you know, in and of itself, like, that's not a huge problem, but it can add up. It can add up. Okay, so a6. Okay, so knight's attacked, we gotta move it. Okay, so it took 3 seconds to move it to knight d6, fine. A g5, okay. So now the question is, what's going on here? So hopefully white realized that by playing knight d6, he was attacking this. If he didn't, okay, well, maybe he realizes it now after g5. Okay, but what's hanging? Okay, well, this is hanging. And, okay, he should realize that this is hanging. So it takes a simple calculation to realize that after take, you can take. And notice what's defended now. This guy. So how many pawns is white up? Well, hopefully you've been counting this whole time and realize that white's now 2 pawns up, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So part of blitz is actually kind of keeping a running total of what's happening in the position. So you should always know how much you're up or down at all times. I know it sounds kind of dumb, but like if you forgot that you took a pawn on move 12, you might think that in this position, that in this position, you were only up a pawn. Or maybe you would think you're not up a pawn at all. Maybe you think it was somehow even. Maybe you forget that you actually want a pawn here, and that you actually want a pawn here. So kind of keeping track of what's going on is actually really important. Because if white realizes he's up 2 pawns here, I mean, there's no reason he wouldn't go for this. Right? So, okay, but I mean, that's not important. What is important is that he moves after g5. And this is hanging. Okay, so say he doesn't see that knights move backwards. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard thing to see. Knights moving backwards is not easy. But, okay, I mean, surely he should see that this is attacking this, right? And so he should probably move it, right? Okay, if he doesn't see that he's attacking knight, then okay, at least play bishop g3. And okay, I mean, you know, black can kind of do his thing with take, and take. But I mean, you're certainly not losing, because, okay, you can always take this if you have to. And you know, it's just position. Okay, I mean, maybe black's slightly better. He has 2 bishops. Who knows? But that's not really what's important. What's important is you kind of want to make sure you're taking stock here, because, you know, if you realize you're up a pawn, then you're not so reluctant to lose a pawn. Whereas if you're even, then you might be more reluctant to lose a pawn and you might start panicking. Yeah, so it's important to keep a running total of what's going on here. So white should be thinking here, I'm up a pawn. Now again, the validity of this extra pawn on e5. I mean, who's to say whether it's a good pawn, a bad pawn? Who knows? I mean, it could be a terrible pawn. It doesn't matter. But just a general idea of the count. Okay, because look what happened here. So 345, right? 345. 252. Can my math majors tell me how many seconds that is? 345 to 252? I believe it's 53. I believe it's 53. Again, if you guys have some applied math doctorates in here, you guys can help me out. But I think this is 53 seconds. Okay, this is completely inexcusable. So you might think that in one of my other videos, I would say this is inexcusable because it loses a piece. And that's not why it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable because he took 53 seconds. So it's interesting because, yeah, this move loses a piece, but the problem is, like, if you actually objectively look at this position, it's actually not that bad for white. So, okay, again, we're not looking at the true valuation of this move, which loses a piece, but okay, let's go a bit further. So, okay, so he loses a piece. The point is black can take here first, and now this bishop is still hanging. If the bishop moves, then the knight can move. So, okay, so take, bishop d3. Okay. So, what's the count? Well, let's go back to here. Let's assume we played this. So what's the count? Okay, well, we're down a piece now. Hopefully we realize that, because he took a piece, we took a piece, and then he took a piece, and we took a pawn. So we are down a piece, but how many pawns do we have? Okay, well, we still have 7, and black still has 5. So 7 on 5, so we have 2 pawns for a piece. And if you notice black's position, it's rather cramped at the moment. This pawn on d6 is actually a big trump. These pieces kind of suck. This rook's not doing anything. This queen doesn't really have much place to go. This queen is active. It's threatening this if the knight ever moves. White also has potential ideas of bishop d3, queen f5, queen h7 mate. This knight can hop into e5. This rook can come to e1. I mean, yes, white's probably objectively worse, but it's certainly not resignable in a blitz game against a 1295. Let's put it that way. Okay, if I'm playing Carlsen as black here, I mean, if I'm white against Carlsen, yeah, I'd probably resign. But against a 1295, I don't think so. You'd be surprised the power of the Mongolite. It's quite powerful. So here now is the real kind of trick to playing blitz, and that is when you're in a position where you're worse, you try to make things more complicated. And when you're in your position that you're better, you try to make things simpler. Okay, why is that? Well, I mean, it's kind of common sense. If you're losing, you want to stir up trouble as much as possible, make it difficult for your opponent. That doesn't necessarily even playing the best moves. I mean, it helps, but it's hard in blitz to play the best moves. But if you can play the most complicated moves, it can actually benefit you in 2 ways. Because one, it's more likely your opponent will make a mistake because it's blitz, and so if you establish a minefield of complications, your opponent can easily go astray. But 2, complications mean your opponent has to think. If your opponent has to think, then it gives you an advantage. So time is a real weapon in blitz, and complications really favor the person who's in trouble on the board, because maybe you can exchange your board position for a time advantage. And conversely, if you're ahead of material, you kind of want to make things as simple as possible. And that's why sometimes when people are better, like, they kind of take time thinking about how to kind of crush all counterplay, but it actually hurts them in the end, because by trying to be exact and making the best moves, you're actually hurting yourself because you're getting yourself into a time hole. Whereas if you just kind of make the lazy move, the simple move, okay, your advantage might not be as great, but at the same time, you'll still be doing well on the clock, and it'll be easier to play the position in general. So here, again, it's kind of hard to realize, but so in this position, white played bishop d3, but notice that, like, this idea will never really work, because as soon as black plays knight f6, everything is kind of covered. Notice that the bishop's hitting f5, the knight's defending the h7 mate. So part of creating complications is not going for one move threats. I know it's really tempting to do that, especially at lower ratings because they often fall for it. But you'll be surprised by how much your position actually suffers by positioning your pieces to go for one move threats. So, I mean, this is also a principle that applies for chess in general. You know, so like after bishop d3, okay, you know, what did black play? Knight f6 right away. Okay, but say black played rook e8 or something. Okay, and then after queen f5, black plays knight f6. So all of a sudden notice that like your pieces are actually probably poorly placed, right? I mean, sure, you could take on f4, but I mean, your pieces are probably not where they want to be. And notice that actually this is not even a threat because I can always play king h8. But okay, I mean, king f8. But in any case, like, you don't want to kind of like pin your hopes on one thing working. Because in general, if that thing doesn't work, you're in actually a big trouble. Whereas if you kind of keep things, you know, interesting and complex and have a variety of ideas, it's more difficult for your opponent to react to it. Like if white's only idea in this position is to try to go for checkmate with queen h7, you know, as long as black is not a complete mongoliso, it's not going to be too hard to stop. And once it's stopped, your pieces are in the wrong positions. So yeah, I mean, usually that's exactly what happens. Like people, when they get desperate and they're losing, they look for one move threats and say, okay, I have to get back into the game by my opponent, you know, missing something. But that's not necessarily the case. And the more subtle and clever your threats are, the more likely they are to work. So if you go for these super obvious, you know, checkmate, 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 it's unlikely that your opponent will fall for it. But it's tempting. So again, like I said before, white should probably just take on f4. And now, I'm not even sure that he's that much worse. Because again, he has 2 pawns for the piece. His pieces are in active positions. And it's really unclear how black untangles immediately. But watch what happens. Okay, so bishop d3. Queen takes c5. Okay, so he won a third pawn. Or sorry, a second pawn, because he didn't take on f4. So it's still 2. So see, that was my fault. I miscounted. You always want to have an accurate count. Sometimes you have an inaccurate count, but you want to try to have an accurate count. Okay, so he's up 2 pawns for the piece. Okay, so now he's up 3 pawns for the piece. So now he actually has material equality, but if you notice, look at his time. 108. So look what happened. 213 to 110. So he spent 1 minute and 3 seconds on this move. So, I mean, this almost cost him the game. So he should realize that, okay, his queen might be getting into some trouble. If it goes here or here, there's discoveries, and it looks dangerous. If his queen goes here, it could get trapped after bishop d7. Again, I'm not, you know, I'm not arguing whether these things are true or not. I mean, it's possible his queen gets away, it's possible it doesn't get away. It's not what's important. What's important, though, is to realize that his queen has this option. And so, as white, you know, quickly playing queen a3 makes the most sense. It might not be the best move. It might actually be relatively bad. But the problem is, you don't really have time to figure out if your queen can escape these various checks. I mean, the other thing you could do is just hope they do, and have some intuition, and just, you know, maybe realize that your queen has this way to go. So, you know, if you're more confident, then that's fine. But, you know, the kind of safe way is to play queen a3 and just keep playing chess. So sometimes you have to know when to kind of get out while you can, and just play a move. So queen a3 makes a lot of sense. But okay, queen d4 is also perfectly playable. But notice how it costs him another minute plus. And now he has 51 seconds. Now he has 18 seconds, and he's actually fine here, relatively speaking. I mean, probably worse, but okay, he has 3 pawns for the piece, 2 after this guy's taken. But with only 18 seconds left, unfortunately, he plays this move. And bishops move forwards, and after bishop takes e4, he resigns. So what happened? I mean, white was playing fine until he kind of panicked, and that led to further panic, and then further panic, and then he just lost by 2 minutes, and he was down a queen. So, again, the point is kind of, you don't really want to spend that much time on a move regardless. When the position is favoring your opponent, you want to try to make things complex. Key pieces on the board, you know, general chess rules, but you might want to even make a move that's objectively not great, but that's more complex than the objectively best move.